So here's the kind of the overview of these courses. I knew what I was getting into because there's very good descriptions of these online. If you go to his website, bruiserindustries.com, he does a really good job of sort of communicating, but just in brief, the Scope Carbine course is designed for an intermediate level or, somebody that's had a little bit of formalized training to expand their understanding of magnified optics. The course focuses on the use of, semi-auto carbines. So these are gas guns with those magnified optics, such as, perhaps an ACOG or a red dot with magnifier. However, most people are using an LPVO, and I would encourage that when going to these courses, particularly on the longer ranges that we were and distances we were shooting for this particular class. The goal is to add skills or skills foundation, which can enable, that continued improvement I think we're all looking for, and then give you some stuff to walk away with and do on your own. So you can, kind of do some self-guided practice there to improve your skills. I think that's the value that most of us are trying to take away when we go to one of these experiences. So it's not basic. So if you haven't had any time on your rifle or really any formalized instruction, you're not going to be covering things like weapon manipulations, reloads, stuff like that. You're definitely going to be going through some various positioning, standard and non-standard positions. You'll work through those, and you'll definitely be challenged physically in portions. I mean, you're up and down all day long, from prone to standing to kneeling and any number of things, but there is a little bit of a physical component, and I'll talk about that later in the podcast. Precision Rifle 1 is more of an introductory class as stated on the website, but I will tell you this. Joe's going to adjust that based on his audience, and he did that for us. I would say I might have been the least experienced in the precision rifle stuff, or let's just call it the bolt guns. When we walked in, I've had very little time behind a bolt gun, and I mean, I felt like this class moved as quickly as the carbine class, and he told us as much on the first 2 days that he would adjust accordingly, and I think he did that well. So. There's a list of equipment that you need. It's basics. It's what you'd expect. Obviously, you have to go equipped with a firearm with an appropriate optic. Things you want are specific ammo, match grade ammo. If you've not been around any of that stuff or ever shot that stuff, you're just using, you're shooting at 25, 50, maybe even 100 yards on the range. You may not have used that stuff before, so you want to be prepped in plenty of time. Order that, get that to your house. So you have it. Other things, notables would be like wind meter and ballistic calculator apps. Joe does a really good job of suggesting what you might need out there. Now, he has stuff for you to use. We'll cover that a little bit more later, but you could do a little prep work on your own to be ready for this thing. I'll talk about how much ammo I actually used while we were out there, but he makes a suggestion there. And then more specifically, if you're interested in kind of what I was using, two things. One, I was borrowing 2 of Joe's guns for both days. I was privileged to do that. I do not own bolt guns specific for this class. I have one in my life, not really appropriate for what we were doing. It's a 70s era Winchester 300 mag, wood chassis, no bipod. It's got an old crusty Leopold optic on it. It's got an old crusty sling on it. Just wouldn't have. It would not have worked well for this application. And then one of his carbines. I do not have an LPVO. It was suggested that would probably be the better thing to bring. And I would recommend, if you've got one of those, make sure you're using that versus like an EOTech with a magnifier, aim point, something like that. I think you're just going to get a lot more out of this class. I'll put that out up front. So I was using a 14.5-inch 5.56 rifle. It had a Vortex razor on it, 1x10, and I was shooting 77 grain ammo, which was the recommended ammo for the class. For PRS, which was the second 2 days, like I said, I used a 20-inch 308. It was mounted with a zero compromise optic, and if you're looking for a model number, you're really curious, it's the ZCO 420, and I was shooting 175 grain ammo, as were most everybody else there. Again, there's a list of equipment for you to bring and pack, and we used all of it. There was nothing extraneous on there, and I was glad to have the stuff that I took. Things like a backpack with a little extra clothing in it because we were building shooting positions, things like that. I'll talk about that, as well as a rear support bag. That was helpful. I got to use several, but I purchased one on my own. That was absolute. I feel like that's a necessity. So there are things there. You go through the list, you decide what you need, and enjoy your time, or so you enjoy your time. All right, let's start at square one. So, without trying to bore everybody, I just want to kind of break into a couple of things. If you've listened to any of my previous sort of after action reports or reviews on courses, and I've done a couple, um, and or on like coaching sessions on the fitness side of the house, which is what we cover on the other episodes, you've heard me get into how important I feel the intake process is from the coach and the student. Good coaches do their best, or at least attempt to do their best at gathering a good deal of information on the student or about their clients up front and before they actually get there. So there's some type of an initial evaluation that can be done a lot of different ways. But for me, this typically happens way before the first day of the session. It gives both the instructor and the student some things to kind of think about and an opportunity to ask some more informed questions and gather some more information so that each gets their communication across and gets out of the experience what they both hope to get out of it. I think that's important. So upon enrolling in these courses, I went through a fairly thorough questionnaire online. Again, bruiserindustries.com. And then after that, I had some comms with Joe, lots of comms with Joe, actually. And as it turns out, a lot of the other students did too. In fact, I think every student did at some level, with the exception of maybe some of the group on the third and fourth day, and I'll get into that later. But I know there was a lot of IG comms back and forth just to make sure we were squared away. Joe's very responsive, and he prides himself on being thorough there. He answers everything you send him, and whether you're going to a class or not. It's become sort of a comedy point. We were talking about how many DMs he gets a day and how many things he's answering. If you watch his Instagram at all, there'll be portions during the work week. There'll be literally like 75 questions and answers in his stories, up to the point where Instagram won't let him post anymore. So he's all over it. There's no doubt he highly respects the people that have chosen to, one, even ask the question, let alone get into his courses. So I think that's something notable, and that's definitely you're going to get the attention you deserve when you sign up with something with Joe, or just send him a message. Bottom line, I felt the groundwork had been put in for being very prepared to have a successful and enjoyable experience, which is always what I'm looking for whenever I invest my time, invest my finance, and travel to these things to spend time with instructors.